Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone. It might be the NBA Finals, but trades can still happen, and we've got a blockbuster. It's not the KD trade or a Giannis one. It's Desmond Bane out of nowhere being traded to the Orlando Magic, and in exchange, the Grizzlies get KCP, Cole Anthony, 4 first-round picks, unprotected, and a swap in 2029. It is a haul for Desmond Bane. So I want to go ahead and break down my thoughts. First of all, I can't say I'm that surprised from Orlando's perspective. Now, they gave up a ton, and I'm going to talk about how much they gave up in a moment, but first I want to talk about why I do think this makes sense. Desmond Bane is really good. He's the exact type of player that Orlando has needed for a couple of seasons now. They desperately needed anybody that could knock down an outside jumper, that could give them some offensive juice, that could just space the floor for Paolo and Franz. If you watched any Magic games last year, there were probably multiple points where you were screaming at your TV, somebody hit a three. Because it didn't happen very often. They were a horrific shooting team. It led to Paolo and Franz having to just, force things on the inside when everybody's collapsing. There would be like 4 or 5 defenders all just sitting in the paint because they weren't worried about any outside shooters, and Desmond Bane is going to help out a lot with that. He is one of the league's best outside shooters, 39% from 3 last year, 38 the year prior, and above 40 the other 3 years of his career. He always shoots on high volume. He's going to do wonders for this Magic team now with, I would say, a somewhat more featured role. It's probably going to be somewhat similar. He's again going to be a third option, but I think there's more room for him to thrive and grow. And Bane, over the course of the past couple of years, especially with the Ja Morant injury and the many other injuries that Memphis has endured, has become a better playmaker, a better on-ball player, whether it's creating off the dribble or just creating shots for himself on the perimeter. Like, Bane has developed into a much better player than I think some people realize. And I think his skill set is being overlooked because of the insane amount of draft capital that, yes, the Magic did give up, and that is something I'm worried about. Again, I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but just from a player fit perspective, I like the idea of Desmond Bane a lot, and I think he could be somewhat unlocked playing with Paolo and Franz. There's this great defensive unit around him. Not that Bane's a bad defender, but now he can, fade into the background a little bit more. He's the worst defender in that starting lineup, and I think that's going to do a lot for him being able to contribute more offensively as well. I feel like overall, it's a great pickup, just in terms of the player for the Magic. And another reason why I'm not surprised that this happened, and why I'm not going to be surprised if Orlando makes more moves or we see more of these shocking blockbuster type trades from Eastern Conference teams, is because I feel like everybody out East thinks the conference is wide open. The Celtics came into this year as this big juggernaut. They, of course, won last season. They kind of ran through the conference, but now Tatum's not going to play next season, and they're in limbo financially. The Cavaliers were this juggernaut all season, but they lost in round 2. The Knicks made it to the conference finals, and I don't think anybody looks at them as a juggernaut. They're now looking for a head coach at the moment, apparently trying to steal anybody's head coach that's employed. Like, the Pacers are really, really good. Trust me, as a Thunder fan, I'm finding out firsthand here in the NBA Finals, but I feel like because they were such an outlier to make it to the finals this year preseason, they're one of the longest odds teams to ever make it to the championship. I feel like a lot of Eastern Conference teams are going to look at that and say, if they can do it, we can do it. And Orlando spent a lot of this season and last year, despite injuries, fighting and hanging around the Eastern Conference. They probably feel like if we can stay healthy and bring in a piece like Desmond Bane who can unlock a lot of things for us, why can't it be us that makes a run to the NBA Finals next year, or makes at least a second round at conference finals? And Bane's young enough. He's only 26 years old. He's under contract. It's not like he's an expiring veteran that you're taking this big risk on. I think he could grow and develop really well with the rest of this roster. Also, giving up all the first round picks allows you to keep Anthony Black. It allows you to keep all those young guys like a Jalen Suggs as well that you want as part of this core going forward. So it was a lot to give up. I do worry about the Magic making other moves because I do think more needs to be done. If you're Orlando, this can't be the only move you make this offseason. If you really want to make that push and be a true threat in the Eastern Conference, you have to add more shooting. I think an upgrade at the big position would be very, very welcome. Like, Wendell Carter's fine and Goga's pretty good in limited minutes, but I think getting a better option there would be huge for them. You probably need more playmaking if you ask me. Like, Suggs is going to be your one, and Bane, like I said, has gotten a bit better playmaking, and Franz is like this point forward, but I think they need a true point guard, whether it's off the bench or starting on this team, just in general, more playmaking. There are things that still have to be done with this Magic roster, and they gave up almost all their draft capital. I mean, maybe they're just banking on development from Anthony Black to be that type of player, but I'm not going to really count on that next season. I think he could still use a few more years to get to the point where I'm ready for him to be like my championship level playmaker. I don't know. I think there has to be more coming for Orlando. If you ask me, this cannot be the beginning, but at the same time, they've somewhat somewhat pigeonhole themselves with how much they give up. It could be similar to the Mikal Bridges situation. Now, I think Bane is a better player than Mikal Bridges, and I think ultimately he adds more to this Magic team than Mikal added to the Knicks, and obviously the Magic gave up less, so I don't think it's as egregious as some people are making it out to be, because I think it makes sense, and I think there is a world where this is a move we look back on a few years down the line if the Magic make it to the finals and say, yeah, that was completely worth it. But it can't be the only thing that they do. They can't rest on their laurels just adding one shooter and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to be fine. And of course, health has to improve for the Magic in general if they want any chance of competing. So yeah, it is a lot to give up. On the Grizzlies side of things, I think this is a fantastic move. Like, Bane is really, really good. And Ja, Bane, Jaren, it's a great trio. It's brought you on some pretty solid playoff runs. I guess only one where they made it to the second round. But when those three are on the court, more times than not, the Grizzlies have looked really, really good. But the issue is they've never looked like a true contender. And this year, they did again deal with injuries, which is just kind of a feature more than an outlier for this Grizzlies roster at this point. They looked completely outmatched by Oklahoma City in the first round. As much as Ja Morant wants to say they figured him out, they didn't. And the Grizzlies were, again, a first-round exit. They went from one of the cream-of-the-crop young teams in the Eastern Conference to now kind of falling behind like the Thunder, who have passed them up, and the Rockets, and like the Spurs with Wemby and De'Aaron Fox. And if they make another big move, like they could, there are just so many young teams. The Timberwolves, you could even talk about. They're not as young. You know, they have like Gobert, for example, and it sounds like they might be trying to add Kevin Durant, but led by Anthony Edwards, like all these teams have kind of passed them up that they were supposed to be ahead of. They need to make some type of pivot. And I think getting 4 first-round picks as well as a swap, in addition to KCP and Cole Anthony, is a great way to do that. Cole Anthony, I don't know if he's going to still be on this roster because they have Ja, because they have Scottie Pippen Jr. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets rerouted in a different deal before we get to next season. But I do think KCP could be a really good fit for them. Hopefully, he refines his shot because it disappeared in Orlando, but that kind of just happens sometimes, seemingly, to Orlando shooters. Still a really, really good defender. I think he's going to add to that identity, and they need somebody like that in the backcourt next to Ja. Although I wouldn't be shocked if he also gets rerouted if both he and Cole Anthony are involved in some more substantial trade within a couple of months. You know, we've got a long time until the season starts up again in October for them to kind of evaluate things and utilize these 4 first-round picks to bring in more talent. I think you have to find veterans that can help you contribute. You have to find a new guy next to Jaren Jackson Jr. Maybe they try to throw themselves in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes. It wouldn't shock me. They were trying to go after Jimmy Butler, and reports were around the deadline they were also interested in Kevin Durant. Maybe this is their move to get draft capital to feel more comfortable with making that type of swing. I'm not really sure, but I think this is the start of a multitude of moves for the Grizzlies to pivot and try and have a new look going into next season, which they absolutely should. If they just ran it back, I was going to be incredibly disappointed, because that's kind of what they did at the deadline, which shocked me that the moves they made at the deadline, despite being one of the top seeds in the West dealing with injuries, was to salary dump Marcus Smart and give up a first-round pick in that exchange. That was it. They didn't add like a Cam Johnson or any real difference maker like it felt like they would. And I mean, a lot of teams didn't make those types of moves, so maybe the market was just too dry and they didn't really feel like it was worth it. But just in general, they had to do something this offseason. They could not run it back. And I'm happy they're doing it early. They're getting it out of the way. They're saying the Grizzlies are open for business. We are not going to be complacent. That's a great change from what we've seen over the last couple of years. I think this roster could look incredibly different. I do still expect Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. to be there, but anybody else, I think it's up in the air at the very least. So yeah, right off the bat, initial reaction, if you want the quick like minute pitch, I think it was a good idea to trade for Desmond Bane if you're Orlando. You gave up a lot, though. I'm interested to see what else they do, because I do think there are still moves to be made, but time is going to tell if this was too massive of an overpay or if it ends up being worth it. In the moment, I do think it was an overpay of some kind, but he is a great fit on this roster, and I think he's going to do a lot for you. And from the Grizzlies' perspective, much needed shakeup. Got to continue to mess with this roster. You cannot be complacent. If you're the Grizzlies, you got to go out there and try and find more players that can maximize the talents of Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. Stop trying to just go full youth movement. I mean, like, young players can help out. Like Edie, I felt like was pretty solid last year, and you've gotten some solid moments in the last couple of years from like a Vince Williams and a Gigi Jackson. Jalen Wells was awesome for you last year, but you need to bring in pieces that can actually help you compete for a championship. And maybe that's taking a swing for Kevin Durant. I don't really know. Maybe it's taking a swing for somebody else. Like, do you go after like a Trey Murphy, for example, someone a little bit lower in the totem pole? Unsure, but it feels like the Grizzlies are gearing up for something or multiple somethings big, and that makes me excited because I think it's much needed for the Grizzlies. But yeah, appreciate you all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Let me know down below in the comments what your takeaways were. Who is the initial winner of this trade? How do you feel about it for both sides? What would you grade it? What do you think else could come down the pipeline for either of these teams? What moves would you follow up with if you were the GM? But yeah, I appreciate you watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.